Friday. I would like to call to order the Economic Revitalization Committee meeting. First order of business on the agenda today is the discussion of Wisteria Lane. Developers T. Ross Brothers are here to talk about that, and also Mr. Girardi and Mr. Narr. So if you two gentlemen would like to get us started on that, we would appreciate it.
Are you requesting Mr. Narr, myself, or the?
Yes, if you, Mr. Narr and Mr. Girardi, if you two could get us started on that discussion, and then if the developers from T. Ross Brothers would like to join in. They were on the call, and then looks like they jumped off here first.
Well,
they might be having some difficulty, but
what I met with the T. Ross Brothers, and basically what has transpired is Pennsy Heights has been done at several different developments or different phases. Phase one.
You need to turn that feedback off, please.
Joe, we might have to go to one.
I turned mine off. I can come over to yours, Gary. Presently right now, Gary and I are in the same room, so I think that's the reason why we're getting feedback.
Yes, it will be definitely.
I'll log off and we'll go with Gary's. Okay. What happened? Gary had logged off. I think you're going to find it's gone, that noise.
Yes.
Yep.
Feedback. So I'll bring Gary in on my computer. You just give him a minute to get over.
From initially, what my understanding has transpired is Pennsy Heights, probably about 10-15 years ago, was done in several different requested phases. Phase one was, I believe, was 20 some lots that they were going to do. There's currently two townhouses at the top of that. We did obviously go through and obtain Wisteria Lane as one of our streets within the city. And that was all that was done at the very top. Phase two, phase three was supposed to be another set of homes, maybe a little bit larger for single family versus the townhouses. And again, this land development plan was approved again, probably a good 15 years ago, well before my time. So I'm just kind of filling you in what I have. It had belonged to, I believe, Mr. Yoder at one point in time. He had since sold it, and I believe T. Ross is going to develop it. I did speak with them, and initially the conversation, and again, what I've had with them is they're going to do phase one or follow up with phase one, which is the townhouses at the top of Wisteria Lane with that subdivision, with the premise of possibly selling the other portion of the property under a subdivision, which would go before the city, to someone else to develop it. They were just looking at developing or finalize that development on phase one. So again, whether they've changed their mind since I've met with them probably 2-3 weeks ago, I'm not sure what they're presenting to us. Because it is my understanding, because of the way that it was set up as far as stormwater, because the plan has been over 10 years old. I did speak with Mr. Lubin a little bit this morning, and the land development plan that had been approved back in that time frame would have to basically be redone as a plan, a new land development plan, stormwater to meet the current stormwater requirements and things of that nature. So at this point in time, I mean, that's really all that I have. We were in the beginning phases of speaking with them, so I'm not sure what further their intent was, but under a land development plan is generally good for 5 years, where if the city within that 5 years had changed the ordinance back then, they would be exempt. But after 5 years, that plan is, to me, it would be, according to Mr. Lubin, would be null and void, and they would be required to meet our current land development plans as well as stormwater. When that happens, that is to go through both John Sanders, who is our city engineer, as well as the Stormwater Authority for review Once the T. Ross Brothers submits us a final plan, it will be reviewed by myself, John Sanders, Eric Smith Gall of Water Authority, as well as Joe Girardi will take a look at it. Once it has all of our bells and whistles that we feel need to go to have, at that point, we'll have them forward it to Lycoming County Planning. Lycoming County Planning will look at it. They are merely an advisory, and that's a requirement under the Pennsylvania Municipal Planning Code. So they will review it, provide us with 5 stamp drawings of their approval and comments that they have. At that point, our planning commission would look at it, and then it would come to city council for approval. Again, unless other things such as financing and stuff like that would need to go through or maybe looked at by ERC. But normally on a strict land development plan, it merely goes before county planning, city planning, and then council for approval.
Gentlemen, can you hear us from T. Ross?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Yes, Gary, thank you for that history. One question that I have relative to that 10-year hiatus rule, there has been some recent activity on there. So does that, because of that, does that 10-year clock, has that started over again, or are you saying we're at the end of that 10-year clock?
My recommendation is what you would need to do is provide us of what activity has transpired up there. I would run it through, obviously, Mr. Lubin, our city solicitor, and get his feedback on that. I would assume if there's activity being done, that may change. But again, what I would need is a formal letter from you saying, hey, this is what has been transpiring up there. And then I would take that to Mr. Lubin for his recommendation and requirements under the Pennsylvania Municipal Planning Code.
Okay, very good. Well, I guess our main focus today is kind of a follow-up meeting after meeting with the mayor. And I'm Mike Fisher. I'm the director of project development here at T. Ross Brothers Construction. This is Chris Helmrich, who is the CFO of T. Ross. And he's also a Williamsport native. Not native, but a resident, correct? Correct. So we did a presentation to the mayor about 2 or 3 weeks ago relative to what we're planning up there. And it was kind of on the coattails of having another meeting with the Lycoming County commissioners. And they were reaching out to us as well as others to solicit some ideas and input from the developer community relative to the use of their ARPA funds. And so there was some brief discussion as to the potential of Williamsport maybe having some opportunities to participate with their ARPA funds. So we're kind of here today to present to you our thoughts and our ideas, and also obviously an informal ask at this point for your consideration of using the ARPA funds. So I guess that's why it's resting into the ERC issue. We obviously have the bigger land development issue to talk about once we start to get some traction here. But as we see it, and are we able to do some screen sharing? Whoever's controlling the meeting on your end?
Yes, I can. I can make you a co-host, and then you should be able to screen share. Just a moment.
Yeah. Let us know when we're able to get on, please.
Okay, screen share should have changed to green at the bottom of your screen now.
Yep. This one here. Okay, so this is the track in question, obviously. And can you go down? Yeah. So you can see, and I'm sure you're all pretty well oriented with the neighborhood, but we're just above the West End development there that was done, I think about 15 plus years ago, the single family subdivision. And where it says Wisteria Lane is the track that currently, as Gary indicated, about 10 years ago, there was subdivision approval. And then there was 2 townhouses that were built up there, and they were one was partially built, and the other one was,
Just the shell was put on the right townhouse, just had a shell.
okay, and then T. Ross, this is the more recent activity, which we'll follow up with some documentation. The T. Ross finished out those townhouses probably within the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, we finished them out about 2 years ago, with the second one selling at the beginning of last year.
Okay, and so the rest of the tract, which represents about 20 acres in this area here. I'm sorry, not 20 acres.
72.
72 acres is what we're proposing to do as phase 2. So phase 1, we would like to move forward with that this summer and finish out that 20 lot subdivision, unless we got an issue with you folks in terms of the Saldo issue, because the time has elapsed. So we're going to explore that further. But then the upper portion of this area is really what we're considering as phase 2. Phase 1, along with Wisteria Lane, it will be townhouses. Can you pull up that townhouse picture there? Just that's what we're proposing to do around the cul-de-sac and along the road there of Wisteria Lane. They're approximately about 1,900 plus square foot per unit, and those will be all owner occupied. Obviously, we're not proposing affordable housing here. We're proposing middle to upper middle income subdivision to finish out what it was started there several years ago. And as I said, they'll be for ownership property. The other what we really are looking for today, and what you pull this up if you could, please, is we are asking for consideration as it relates to your ARPA funds to help with the I want to kind of scroll that down a little bit. Bring this down there, right there. That's good. To help with the sewer and water and the storm sewer. On the first upper criteria where it says Wisteria Lane 20 lot existing subdivision, that's obviously what we've been talking about for most of our discussion up until this point. We are going, T. Ross and the development company, Woodland Development LLC, is going to put in almost $5 million to build out the rest of those units. And then obviously we had the water tap-in fees and the sewer tap-in fees calculated there, and a small portion for lateral. So all in, we're looking at close to a $5 million development there. We have not moved forward in those projects because of a large percentage, because of the cost of materials being so wildly fluctuating up and down. And we are asking for consideration of being able to tap into your ARPA to help us underwrite the water tap-in fees and the sewer tap-in fees, as well as the construction of the laterals, which we're estimating to be $98,000 and some change. The rest of the build out, which we call phase 2, is for the upper portion of that, which is just west of Williamsport High School grounds. And that's going to be pretty costly. And quite frankly, up until we had a discussion about the ARPA funds, we were really looking at the cost to build in the rest of the infrastructure, the public sewer, the water, the storm water, particularly the roadways. You know, we were looking at in excess of $1 million. And we just didn't feel that the the rate of return would be there. And once we started to have this discussion about, hey, well, maybe there's a possibility where we can infuse several $100,000 of some other public dollars to get it to the point where it does then become somewhat affordable, and it really begins it really tips the the consideration of it not being feasible to potentially feasible. So what we're looking at is, again, we would come in and we would finance and find investors for the storm wall, I'm sorry, the roadway basically, and some of the earthwork that would be required. And then we were hoping that the ARPA funds could come in both from the county and the city to finance the water and sewer and the storm water. And then if we look over to the sources as a recap, what we're asking for between the county and the city is less than 1%, I'm sorry, about 8% of the funding that's necessary to get it to the point where we can then go ahead with the rest of the project and finance the 5.9 million with the road work and the other necessary work that will allow for 13 lots to be subdivided up in that area, ranging from 1.5 acres up to 6.9 acres. And they would then be marketed and sold for owner occupied build out, with the idea that we're probably looking at a little bit more of a higher end ownership for anywhere from, you know, upper middle income to higher middle income type person, the professional, the doctor, that sort of thing, that might be interested. And what we've been hearing in our discussions up there locally, and I'm sure you've also heard, and I know Chris is who is a private investor up there, who has bought several homes, larger homes, and rehabilitated them and put them back on the market with the idea of attracting doctors and such. There are some people that have an appetite for that housing, but there's a lot of people that seemingly have an appetite if I want new. I want new and larger, and there really isn't much of that available, if any of that available, as a product source. And again, that would be owner occupied. So in total, we're talking about creating somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 plus units in that area of Newbury up there. And just, you know, within walking distance to the school, at least in the upper lots. So that would be really attractive, we think, from a marketing standpoint. And what we're looking at is a total of 524,000 of ARPA funds that could be infused into both phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 is virtually ready to go unless we got an issue with the Saldo clock, because we were going to move forward with that if we were able to get these funds, and we were going to move forward with that within the next couple of months. And then the remaining 13 acres, which is going to be the larger lift in terms of building in the infrastructure because it's not up there, we were looking at moving forward with probably trying to get that moving this year, if we don't run into any problems with subdivision and land development approval, which I don't really anticipate doing that. But and then be in a position hopefully next year that they'll be ready for sale lots up there. We don't really, at the present time as a builder, we don't really intend to build that out ourselves. We would like to just make it available to potential buyers that want to build their own homes. If necessary, maybe we might consider building a spec home up there, but that's not really in the total scheme of things at the present time. So that's what our thoughts are. We are going to have another follow-up with Lycoming County Commissioners next week to further this discussion. The last time we had a brief discussion with them, we didn't discuss the fact that we've had some conversations with Williamsport. There was some reference to maybe having a conversation with Williamsport, but now we can go back and say, we met with the mayor and we met with the ERC folks, and we're progressing with the dialogue as we go. I think Lycoming County, their schedule for their funds is that right now, I think they have an artificial window to bring in formal, like a pre-app, if you will, of an actual ask by the end of this month. As I said, we're meeting with the commissioners next week in a non-public meeting, just discuss with them the the opportunity and the interest of them for using their ARPA funds towards this project.
Just to kind of reiterate some of the things that Mike said. My name is Christopher Helmrich. You know, I live up in the Williamsport School District in Cogan Station. I actually am the one that found that piece of land, you know, several years ago. You know, I originally saw that as an opportunity to solve some of the issues that you know, many realtors, as well as, you know, people that work within the city in the surrounding area consistently, you know, come to me and express the need for housing development. We sat in that county commissioner meeting a few weeks back, and, you know, you'll hear Herm Logue and you'll hear developers say, well, there's no development because the cost of developing is so high. In the city, there's very little opportunity to develop single family. This is one of the few areas, and I know that you guys as a committee are working on doing some revitalization, you know, through some different properties and doing some tear downs, and those are all positive things for the community. You know, our city historically, you know, has been saying we need to bring manufacturing, we need to bring business to Williamsport. Now we're actually in the predicament where we have lots of opportunity to bring people in, whether it's, you know, Geisinger going to Muncie, the industrial people that are coming into town, the molding, you know, plant that was just built across from the landfill. All of these people, all of these industries that are coming in now need housing. You know, we met with Jason Fink a few weeks back, and I've had, you know, discussions over the course of the last year, you know, saying that, you know, people are coming to him saying that there's no housing. You know, it's the same theme that we're hearing across the board. We have people telling us that there's executives living in Lewisburg because they can buy a brand new home. As Mike said, I recently, in the last several years, renovated 2 homes. One was 100 years, another one was probably about 45 years. And, you know, I had people go through those homes, and, you know, they wouldn't consider it simply because it wasn't a new home. You know, a lot of the doctors that come to UPMC, they don't want a 50-year-old home or a 75-year-old home. They want a new home. And I think if we're gonna, you know, build the tax base and increase, you know, jobs in Williamsport, we all need to work together to do that. And when I, you know, originally saw this subdivision, you know, I felt that was an opportunity to bring some new townhomes. I actually didn't even look at the upper piece of what we're talking about here as phase 2. So the townhomes, I guess the point of the discussion today is the townhomes, to build those out, we can solve problems pretty quickly and put, you know, about 18 new units up there, 20 new units up there. You know, if we have to look at the zoning again, we will. We're not proposing to change any of the boundary lines in the subdivision already that's been approved. These homes are a little bit smaller than the homes that were originally built. The ones that are up there now are 2,800 square feet, full basement, unfinished. We were basically going to build the same kind of footprint, just shrink it a little bit. But we have the ability to put, you know, some new houses on the market, you know, in a reasonable time frame to help, you know, solve some of these housing issues. Phase 2 is more of a situation where if we don't get the ARPA funds, I can tell you right now, we're not going to do it. The cost to develop that ground is just entirely too high. And I don't think there's, you know, if you would go up there, you would see, you know, it's a mountainside. There is some great spots up there. I think if it was developed, I think their lots would sell. But it's a considerable amount of upfront money to hope for a return on that. And so, you know, I can sit here and confidently tell you that if we don't get, you know, some help in doing that, this would be something that we would just probably sit on the land or look to do, you know, something else with it. But we would still do phase 1 up there, I believe. You know, that kind of hasn't progressed because prices, as everybody knows, has just gone through the roof, and you know, we've seen, you know, lumber prices, you know, go up 30-40%, drywall shingles. So, that's part of the issue why that, you haven't heard from us recently is because of that fact. Do you guys have any questions for us?
I have just two, if I mind. This is Joe Girardi. I'm the coach administrator. This phase that you're doing now, is that going to be run through like an association where, the grass is maintained by one individual, you have no outbuildings, above ground pools aren't permitted, that type of thing?
No,
Or-
this is a non-association. You strictly, you're going to buy the townhome. You're going to own your share of the property. That's, these are divided. Each townhome lot is, basically divided.
Right.
So they're responsible for their own maintenance. We do have a theme for the build out where we're only going to use 3 colors of siding. We have a kind of a scheme for the build out, but as far as restrictions go or homeowners association, no. We'll have some small restrictions, but that's basically the restrictions that are already filed for the 2 that are up there now.
Okay.
But it's nothing, too restricted. It's pretty basic, covers the basic things.
And the only other question I have is your water tap on fees. And I don't know this for fact, but I'm assuming there's a fire hydrant presently in this particular area?
Yes.
Yes, I believe there is.
Right.
Right at the top of the development on the left, I believe.
That's what I thought, but I wasn't sure. I just wanted to make sure. That's really all the questions I have.
Any other questions?
Mr. Biter, if I may, I apologize. I have a couple questions. My invite showed that this meeting was taking place at 1 o'clock rather than 11 o'clock. So I apologize for my my tardiness. Gentlemen, I thank you for being here. I have a couple of questions, and maybe you've already gone over this, so I apologize if I'm asking you to be redundant. So real quick, you're asking for approximately $262,000 from the city and ARPA funds. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
There, just to clarify, so phase 1 would be about 49,000. And then phase 2 would be about 212. So it would come in 2 phases.
So obviously, phase 1, we don't need as much because the infrastructure has already been built up the road, up the hill to that development that's taking place now, which is an approved subdivision. But there's some question about the validity of whether the subdivision is still approved or not, because there's so much time that has elapsed from the original approval, which was like 10 years ago. But I think we can rectify that.
I guess, gentlemen, what I'm curious about is, I have some friends that live down in West End Terrace. So I was there, I used to be in that community in that area when the initial construction began on Wisteria Lane. But I couldn't quite remember it. So I went back through the GIS and I looked it up. And, I went up there and I drove around the area just to make sure, so to kind of, reacclimate, reacquaint myself with the area. These townhomes, it shows were built in 2008. Is that correct, gentlemen?
Just to recap, the left townhome was started and built in 2008. The right townhome, just the shell was on. When my group purchased this in 2018, we had 1 complete townhome that was occupied for, I think, a year at one time. And the right one just had the interior framing, no drywall, no real insulation. It was basically a shell. And we finished them out within the last, about 2 years ago.
Okay. I was going to say, because again, what I'm seeing here, it looks like the left unit, that's 2,300 square feet, was sold December 19th of 2019. And then approximately 320. And the right unit was sold February 4th, 2021. And that's approximately 2,700 square feet. Is that correct?
The square footages are incorrect. The square footage is around 28 and 29, but the sale dates are correct.
Okay, I apologize about that. I'm just going off of what the GIS says here. Okay.
Yeah, they're much larger than what's needed. I'm not sure what the original vision is up there, but they're basically were big single family homes. And keep in mind that 2,800 square feet was without the unfinished basement too. So they could have been 4,000 square foot homes when they were done.
So I guess where my mind's going, gentlemen, is, and again, I was up in the cul-de-sac. It looks like you have some build-ready sites already around the cul-de-sac and Wisteria Lane. Am I correct? I saw.
Yeah, correct.
utility-
That's the 18 to 20 townhomes that we're discussing for phase one. That's in the approved subdivision up there already.
Okay. And if these two were built all the way back in 2008, and it took, 11 to 12, 13 years to sell these two, how soon would you expect that if you build additional townhomes up here, how soon would you assume that they would be sold?
Yeah, myself and two other individuals, as far as the development company, purchased this entire tract of land in 17, 18. I don't remember the exact timing. I think it was at the end of 17. So we went in and got building permits and built out the left townhome. We basically gutted it, redid it, finished that one, and started working on the right townhome. And it did take probably 9 months to sell that one. But as a developer, the first two are always the hardest to sell. And once you start selling them and people see activity, sales tend to pick up quite quickly. We did not start the next two because we wanted to see how the market was. And honestly, the market that we have right now, we probably, if we would have just kept going, we probably would have built all these out and probably sold them. But the issue is obviously in the last 6 to 9 months, the costs have dramatically increased across the board. So we're getting hit with inflationary, but we believe that it'll be a couple of years to build out and sell. That's what the projection would be.
A couple of years to build out these remaining townhomes around Wisteria.
Correct.
And you forgive me, I came in and you're assuming an additional 30 units, right?
It's about 20 units, so it'd be 10 townhomes in the subdivision.
20 units over the next couple of years. And that would just be the construction, are we also accounting for the predicted time of sale and ownership in that also?
Yeah, based on what I see in the market right now, I would think that we would be able to sell them as we build them. And I'm being conservative. I mean, my personal opinion is it would probably get done faster than that, but I don't want to overstep here. I'd rather be a little bit more conservative in my numbers. I said, the last house I sold was on the market for I think 7 days.
Okay, so it sounds okay. And gentlemen, what's the price point? I see what the last two sold for up there. Or is that pretty much a consistent price point? I mean,
it's going to be in the 280 to 300. It's going to be a little bit lower, but around that. The first one was 320, and we gave 10 grand back, and so it was sold for 310. But they were a little bit larger, but they were also old, as you mentioned. They were built originally in 2000, started in 2008. So we're looking in that 280 to 300,000, and that's going to depend on what options the homeowner selects if they come in before they're actually built out, and customizes any changes. Like want something done in the basement or something special. We will be accommodative to any prospective buyers if they come in during the building process.
Okay, so you have to forgive me. I'm just doing my math here real quick. I'm all in favor of doing development here. We do have a housing need. What I'm trying to figure out is whether or not personally, I think that this is a viable expenditure for ARPA funds. The purpose of the ARPA funds, what I would like to see is generational growth. So I'm just trying to, in my mind, determine whether or not the time frame over this development and the amount that's being requested of us is going to, justify its return on our investment over, what length of time, as a result of the real estate tax that we would be collecting them from this development. Can either of you two gentlemen speak to what we might expect to see should we choose to fund this?
I can tell you now the taxes on the existing homes as a whole are about between 5,000 and 5,500. So from a city base, I think you're probably $1,800 per unit, I would say estimate on that. So multiply that by 20, and you're looking at $30-some thousand, a year, almost 40. So and that's just the phase one. But in addition to that, you're also generating additional base for the municipal sewer and water authority. You're generating new business that's not existing in the city, which, my understanding talking to Mike Miller is, he's always getting told, hey, we got to try to grow the business. But where do you grow it in the city? So the economic impact goes far beyond the taxes. You're going to have the retail capacity. You're going to, these people that aren't living in Williamsport right now are, going to move into these townhomes, and they're going to spend money in the city. So I kind of look at the overall picture when we're looking at this. And for this particular phase one, you're investing, we're asking you to invest $49,000 with a tax base of 38 roughly thousand coming back, and within 2 years and every year after that, plus the rest of the economic impact on that.
If I may cut in, then I personally, I think that any development in the city is a good thing, specifically when it's going to bring more residents. I have one question, and then I'd like to wrap up this discussion so we can be amenable to everybody's time given the scheduling error. Will you at one point have to put in a second access road to access these homes? And if so, where would that be done?
That would come in the phase two, so phase two would have to be a full land development, which I think what everybody was kind of getting at the beginning of the conversation. We got cut off, we got kicked out of the meeting and had to get back in, so I didn't hear. We've actually done a preliminary layout with Livick Civil. They're very familiar with the city. I think they had conversations. My understanding, based on their research and the layout that they gave, there does not need to be a second access point. When you get to the top of the cul-de-sac, let me minimize this here. This might be a little bit better if I can get this, show you here. But, yeah. Small amounts of find this. There you go. So let me zoom in here for you. So when you come up West End Terrace, right here, where it says Wisteria Lane, that's actually where it leads down the cul-de-sac. Right here, all the utilities are right here to go up the hill. Basically, we want to go up the hill and bend the road back around to somewhere about in here. So all the utilities are right here. So you would basically come up West End Terrace and just continue and to go up the hill. Now, like I said, this is all preliminary. This is what the engineers laid out for us. We provided them, all of the information. This was part of our, mini study that we did to see if this thing was viable. So, they had given us, and I would think that in that very early discussions of that, next step, if we would get approval, we would be able to identify any issues right away, but we don't believe that there are any. That's what we enlisted them to do.
How much are you asking from the county for phase one?
Same amount.
50-50 is what we were,
Okay.
50 for the city, 50 for the county.
So you essentially,
like I
you need 98 for phase one then.
correct.
And okay. All right. Thank you. That lends itself a little bit better. So what I would ask then of you two gentlemen, and if other members of the committee have anything to add to that, please do. Number one, we need to figure out the zoning issue to make sure that everything there is still okay for development in that subdivision, from the way I understood it from Mr. Nar and Mr. Girardi. And number two, I think that ERC and the city need to have some more discussions with the county directly. So that way you gentlemen don't have to play middlemen in there, and we can see what this holistic picture looks like. I will say, in my opinion, phase one seems like a no-brainer to get that project started for a $49,000 investment, to see that pay off in about 1.5 years in tax revenue. But then again, Mr. Helmerich, as you mentioned, the residual growth over time and having more people visit your local shops and amenities, and also the growth of the school district, which is very important to many of us sitting in this call right now. So I appreciate that. Is there anything else that any of the committee members would like to add?
Mr. Biter, can I ask one quick question?
Please, Mr. Grimes.
I think this matters because of our timeline for when we can spend ARPA money, but if we're going to pull this out of the pot, if you will, of stormwater and sewer, Mr. Helmerich, do you have an idea of when you would actually start the work on the stormwater sewer for phase two? Because we have a limited time to spend this money. And if you're going to wait till the complete build out, selling the homes is done on phase one before that starts on phase two, there's a chance that that could end after our timeline to be able to give you those funds for that specific project.
No, our plan would be to start phase one this summer, as weather permits and materials actually is probably the main driver. But no, we're going to go through this process and submit the county application, continue our conversations. If we could get funding for that, and everybody's on board and everybody comes together and says we're going to do this, we could start that as well by the end of the year. And your basically your stormwater and your utilities are going to be one of the first things that you do with the road. So I don't think the timeline will be an issue in that aspect. And we can address more specific dates if as we get further in our discussions, if you think it's going to be an issue. But I don't see that it would be an issue.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Biter, if I may, I just had a couple other quick questions. I apologize, I was coming in late. Nick, while I'm asking, if you could run the numbers real quick, because I just want to verify, if we're at assume 16, I think our local real estate tax is 16 mills on an average sale of $280,000 per unit with 20 units. That brings my number to 89.6 annually in tax revenue, which at a $262,000 investment, that would pay off itself in less than 3 years. So that return, I love seeing those numbers. As Mr. Biter had also stated, the other ancillary effects from investment in this and the development would be great. But I just did have one last question, gentlemen, and I apologize. I've got to ask it. You took over this development, or you purchased this, am my understanding correct, Mr. Helmerich, in 2018?
That is correct.
Okay. So I'm just curious, you're coming to the city looking for, requesting ARPA funds. Did you look into grants or government loans, any other traditional ways to try and raise these funds or capital to continue on this investment in this development? And if so, if was it unsuccessful?
No, we have not sought out any funding outside of these initial discussions. We have been, like I said, we went to the county commissioner meeting. I've been talking locally with real estate agents, and this really had just come up more recently with the project being put on hold because of costs going up so much last year, and with construction material costs. So we basically just put it on hold. Now we're continually approached and talked about the needs, and this is just the first shot at, hey, here's what we have. We can make this happen, but we just need a little bit of help. The phase 2 part, we really haven't even thought about doing phase 2 until all of these discussions came up about new housing. When we bought this, we were going to build out the townhomes, and we had no plans for the upper part of it. I know there's a lot of good deer up there. I'm not a hunter, but I've had a lot of friends ask me, hey, can I go hunt up there?
So you don't mind if I do?
Yeah, no, I mean, we've looked at timbering, but we really didn't have any serious discussions about, doing phase 2 until just recently. So.
And Councilman, just to further address your question, by way of my background, before I came to T. Ross, I spent 35 years being employed at city council and governments. So I'm very familiar with what's out there and how you can mix and match those funds. And with very, very rare exceptions, this ARPA funds seems to me like a really good fit. It has a lot of flexibility in terms of eligibility type of activities. We have no interest as a group to build low-income housing, which that would open up obviously a lot of avenues for us in relationship to maybe the community development block grant to fund some of the sewer and the water activities. But we want to keep this at market rate housing for different purposes. So that really kind of restricts us as to the type of affordable financing or grant funds that might be available out there to help us with some of these costs.
Okay. The only reason I asked, gentlemen, is that, obviously there's, we've got all these ARPA funds, and, there's a lot of different needs that we've identified throughout the city as far as where these ARPA funds should be designated to. I just wanted to make sure I heard it correctly, that if you're not able to secure these ARPA funds, that, forgive me for wording it this way, it seems like you're not going to choose to continue this development on, or is that correct? Is my assumption correct?
I would say phase 2 would definitely not happen. Phase 1 most likely will still happen. It's just the timeline is going to be based off of, what we see material wise in the market. I think it's going to be a lot more drawn out. I just don't. There's just more risk, but it'll still get done. It's just not going to get done as timely, I would say.
You're talking about phase 2.
No, phase 1. Phase 1. Phase 2 would not happen without the ARPA funds. We're not going to go through that. We already have a price for timbering it, and we already have somebody lined up to buy 20 acres of it. So we'll get enough money out of that'll help recover, some of the costs, and then, we may look at, just trying to sell the residual piece of land to one person. But we will not, I can firmly say we are not going to consider phase 2 if we don't get ARPA funds.
But we see it kind of be problematic even to sell off any other acreage as somebody that wants to build up there because of the cost of that sewer and water to get up there. Because in checking with your ordinance, they are not allowed to put a on-lot septic system or a well up there. They have to, because of where the location of it is, it's there. Your ordinance is clear that they had to build that. So I don't necessarily see somebody taking it. If we have like a residual tract there of 50 acres to sell off after we timber it and sell maybe 20 acres to the neighbor, I don't necessarily see somebody coming in there and building any more housing because of the costs associated with the public infrastructure.
Okay. And if you did get the funding for phase 1, approximately the 49,000, then you could move forward with the construction of the 20 townhome units. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And then the 45 or the $49,000 of ARPA funds would have a direct impact on the end purchaser. That this would help to alleviate some of the market price the selling point price that you gentlemen would be selling them for to make the housing more affordable. Is that correct?
Can you repeat the question? I didn't quite hear.
I'm sorry. Yeah. I said, so is my understanding correct that if you received the $49,000 to complete phase 1 of this townhome project, that those savings would then be passed on in the end result and be reflected in your selling price point for purchasers, potential home buyers to want to come and be more attractive for them to come up here?
Correct. You are correct. Yes.
Okay.
They're going to be more affordable with the funding than they would be without any additional funding.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I do not have any more questions, Mr. Biter.
And if there's nothing else, then gentlemen, I really appreciate your time and being able to pivot with the miscommunication on our end. We have some work to do as well as you do to figure out, again, if that zoning portion is going to still be correct or if anything has to happen with that going forward. So thank you again for that. And I look forward to talking to you. And next time we do talk, if you have any more plans, details, things like that you could share, architectural designs, so we can be more informed, that would be wonderful.
Absolutely. We can get you some floor plans and 3Ds.
Yeah, appreciate your time and your interest, and we will be, as I said, meeting with the commissioners next week. And then I'm sure, hopefully, you guys have conversations back and forth between the two public bodies. And we would just like to continue to have dialogue with you to finalize your decision.
Excellent.
Thank you,
very
everybody,
much.
for your time today.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right, we got everybody still here that we need to. Did we lose Vince? We may have.
I lost Vince.
I think he thought that's all he had. That's all right. Item number 2 on the discussion for today, I have the Park Ave. So about a decade ago, I think it was now, maybe 7 years ago, there was a Park Avenue plan set forth that was commissioned by council and the administration, given all the work that was being done by UPMC, the building of the new YMCA, and so on. So what I would just like to ask in this, if from Chelsea and Skip, if you could, I don't mean to put you on the spot right now, but in the future for maybe next ERC meeting, if you could update us on that particular plan. Has any action been taken, or has that just been shelved? Because as we just talked about, housing is a very important need within the city, not just high-end housing, but I do think that affordable housing is also going to be necessary. And that particular neighborhood is ripe for development, considering the constant expansion of UPMC and the plans that they have to turn it into a level 1 trauma center, and then the 699 Rural Ave building that currently sits vacant that they use for police and SWAT drills and whatnot. I know that's planned to be torn down, but they do have some other hurdles to get through first. So I think development would be something that we should look into with that, given the ARPA funding. So if I can put that on your agenda, as I mentioned, Skip and Chelsea, I would appreciate that to hear from you next ERC meeting.
No problem, Mr. Biter. The mayor and our department have been discussing, along with UPMC, the Park Avenue plan, and basically once we have some resources, we should be able to start to work with them to put together a strategic rollout of what can be done within the neighborhood there, as the original plan had started to describe. Not being completely familiar with the plan, I've read over marginally. We have the opportunity to move that Park Avenue plan forward once some resources are in play for the redevelopment authority / land bank to begin the process. But yes, we'll continue to look at the plan, have some discussions with the mayor, and come back with some proposals, or at least an outline of where we think or where we would suggest, and then take direction from council as to how we move forward from there.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Skip. Item 3 on the agenda today is the zoning hearing board. Mr. Nar. You're muted.
As far as the zoning hearing board, I was unaware that there was any issue with the zoning hearing board.
As am I. I'm just going off of what was on the agenda for today. So it sounds like there's no issue with that. And
No, we just recently acquired Fred Holland. Joe Musto was our longtime zoning hearing board solicitor who has stepped down. Fred Holland stepped in last year and has wished to continue on. So I don't think there's, members wise, yes, we do have a couple members that need to be reappointed, those type of things. But as far as any issues, I'm not aware of anything at this time.
okay, it just sounds like basic housekeeping things that we would need to be aware of as vacancies are filled and new appointments are made. So lastly, it looks like any related items. Is there anyone that has anything they'd like to discuss?
Hey, Skip or Chelsea, that Park Avenue plan, would you be able to forward that to me?
Yes, and actually it should be available online underneath the community development's website as well. I actually worked with Spike on updating all plans so that they're available for everybody in the public to see.
So that's on
So I'd be more than happy to forward that link to you as well as the Park Avenue plan.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Okay, seeing that there is nothing else on the agenda and no other related items to